Diversity in the animal kingdom is so enormous. You get mammals, arthropods, a pig, a cat.
The insects, the birds, the panda, or the rhino.
Sea stars, or horseshoe crabs, or worms.
They look very different. Their behavior is very different.
Animal kingdom is my favorite, because I'm part of it.
Animals are a large and incredibly diverse group of organisms, making up about 3/4 of the species on Earth. Some live above ground, some underwater, some are covered in fur, others have feathers, but by far the most are insects. Animals are all members of the kingdom Animalia, and the study of animals is called zoology. The earliest fossil evidence of animals dates from the Vendian period, 650 to 544 million years ago, and evidence from man's fascination with animals can be seen in early cave paintings. But it wasn't until Aristotle, who wrote his book A History of Animals, that zoology became a science. In his work, he collected facts on approximately 500 animals. Nearly 2 millenniums would pass before Conrad Gesner would become known as the greatest naturalist of his time and the father of zoology. Along with his writings, he published the first large-scale illustrated works on zoology. His research became the standard reference throughout Europe during the 16th and 17th centuries, and he employed highly skilled artists to ensure that the representations were as scientifically accurate as possible. In more recent years, scientists and researchers have ventured beyond the anatomy and physiology of animals and focused their attention on the genetic similarities, as well as behavior and social interactions between organisms. These studies have blurred the line that was once thought to be very sharp between humans and the rest of the animal world. They've opened new doors for new exploration within the animal kingdom. So while animals have many similarities, they are also remarkably different, and yet we are all classified in the animal kingdom. So what exactly defines an animal?
Well, there are a lot of definitions, and one of the things you have to understand about science is that to almost everything there's an exception. But generally we talk about animals being multicellular, so more than one cell. Heterotrophic, meaning that they can't make their own food. Most of them can move voluntarily, and they breathe oxygen. So those are kind of the 4 major characteristics of animals.
Can all animals really move? What about sponges or coral?
Most animals can move voluntarily, but a lot of animals are sessile, at least at certain stages of life. For example, a coral, once it settles, is just going to sit there for its life. Other animals move very slowly. A sea anemone generally stays still, but it can actually move and it can actually even somersault. So movement is a characteristic, but it varies greatly among species.
One distinction in the animal kingdom is whether or not a species is considered a vertebrate or an invertebrate.
Vertebrates have a backbone, a spine, and they have an internal skeleton made of bone or cartilage. Invertebrates do not. Vertebrates are often called the craniate chordates because we have an internal skeleton with a very well-defined head and brain.
The vast majority of species are invertebrates. The average size of a species is the size of a housefly. So most things are small and most things don't have backbones.
Invertebrates, which make up 95% of the animal kingdom, include echinoderms like starfish and sea urchins. There are about 6,000 of these creatures. Another invertebrate is the sponge. There are 10,000 species of sponges and about 10,000 cnidarians, like jellyfish and anemones, and thousands of different types of worms. 70,000 different kinds of mollusks, like snails and clams, but by far the largest group of animals, vertebrate or invertebrate, are insects. Over 800,000 different species. Vertebrates include mammals like us, humans, as well as chipmunks and whales and primates. There are around 4,500 known species of mammals, but other vertebrates include birds. There are 9,000 species of birds, and around 6,000 types of reptiles, lizards, snakes, and turtles, 4,000 species of amphibians, and around 26,000 kinds of fish, bony fish and sharks.
Sharks, in most regards, are fish, meaning they live in the water and they extract oxygen from the water by the use of gills, but they differ from what we would call bony fish because sharks lack bones. There are no bones in the body of a shark.
Sharks have a cartilaginous skeleton, like rays and skates, but they are still considered vertebrates. But in the animal kingdom, classification goes beyond invertebrates and vertebrates.
Now, when we classify these animals, they aren't grouped vertebrate, invertebrate, the way we think about them. They're actually, if you start at the kingdom of Animalia, and then you go down to the next level of classification, which is called a phylum. There are 33 or maybe even more phyla, and only one of those contains all of the vertebrate animals. So we're lumped in one phylum with fish and snakes and dogs and cats and birds, okay? The invertebrates, what that tells you is invertebrates are incredibly diverse, incredibly different from each other if they're separated at the phylum level. So 32 of those phyla have all of these other critters that most of us know very little about.
Species in the animal kingdom can range in size, from organisms with less than 100 cells, such as a rotifer, to those with trillions of cells, weighing many tons, such as an elephant. But what they share in common is that they are all composed of more than one cell, animal cells. The cells in each of these animals are all about the same size, about 10 to 100 micrometers in diameter. So it is not the size of a cell that determines an animal's size. It's the number of cells.
The skin cell on the elephant may not be any bigger or smaller than our skin cells. You know, just because an elephant is bigger, that means he has more cells.
Let's consider a typical animal cell. What is it made of? How does the cell work?
Animal cells are eukaryotic cells, which means they are enclosed by a plasma membrane and contain a membrane-bound nucleus and organelles.
Within the cell are a number of different organelles. Just as we have organs within our body, the cell has organs within it. Because the cell is very small, these organs are called by cell biologists organelles.
However, unlike the other eukaryotic cells like plants, animal cells don't have a cell wall. The lack of a rigid wall allows animals to develop a greater diversity of cell types. So while in the embryonic stage of life, animal cells develop into differentiated cells that are specialized for a particular function.
If you think about our body, we have millions and millions of cells, and we are specialized. We have skin cells and blood cells and bone cells, and all of these cells are pretty much needed to make us. And we need that to do our life functions, to eat, to reproduce, to move.
Specialized cells with similar function come together to form tissues that also perform specific functions. The four major types of tissues are epithelial, a sheet of cells that provide protection, connective tissue that support and bind like bone and ligaments, muscle tissue. Muscle is a very specialized tissue that has both the ability to contract and the ability to conduct electrical impulses, and nervous that sense and transmit signals. When a group of tissues work together for a major function, they are called an organ, like the heart or the brain. And when organs come together to perform an overall common function, it is called a system, such as the circulatory system.
In order to grow, you need to get nutrients and water throughout your body, your structure. Plants do this. Some plants do this with a vascular system. We do it with a circulatory system. We transport food and oxygen to all cells of our body, and we remove waste.
The respiratory system is responsible for gas exchange, bringing oxygen into the body and pumping out carbon dioxide. The digestive system is responsible for extracting energy and nutrients from food by breaking it down into simpler chemical compounds and eliminating wastes.
Most animals get some kind of food, whether it's a worm, a clam, a piece of pizza, and they put it in some kind of mouth, goes down to some kind of stomach, and digest it.
But not all animals ingest their food.
If we take sponges, for example, they filter food through specialized pores. That's how they obtain their food. Other organisms like the starfish will open up a clam and stick their stomach inside the clam and digest it that way. So there's a huge variation in how animals obtain their food, their nutrients from their environment. That is probably one of the characteristics of animals, that we actively acquire food and energy from our environment.
The skeletal system provides structural support to organisms, but there are many different ways this works in animals. There's internal or endoskeleton, as in mammals, birds, and fish. And there's the fluid-based hydrostatic skeletal system found in organisms like worms or jellyfish. And then there's the exoskeleton, which not only provides structure and support, but also provides a protective covering to insects.
Insects have an exoskeleton, which is made of chitin, and their muscles attached to their outer shell, which then they shed. Our muscles attached to an inner skeleton.
And then there's the muscular system, responsible for movement. Other systems include the reproductive system, responsible for the bearing of offspring, the endocrine system, responsible for secreting hormones throughout the bloodstream, the integumentary system, which covers and protects the body, like skin, and there is the lymphatic and the immune systems, which combat infection, but are the least understood of all the body systems. The nervous system receives and processes input from the senses, coordinates muscle activity, and monitors the body's organs.
Nerve systems are connected to senses, to sense different parts of the world, to see, to hear, to smell, to taste. Animals have different capabilities in these senses. Bats can send out sound waves that we cannot hear, but the bats can hear, and they reflect these sound waves off of flying insects, which allows bats to be able to fly around at night, happily gorging themselves on insects in the air, because they can see these insects through their sound waves, their high-frequency sound waves that we cannot see.
Much of our body systems in us, in humans, is under neural control. So we have a central nervous system that runs us. And not simply from a conscious point of view. We have an autonomic nervous system which regulates electrolyte levels in blood, and it regulates hormone release, and it regulates heat and maintain internal homeostasis.
All the life functions that we do and all the systems that we have that perform these life functions all do it to maintain homeostasis, which is an internal balance of the systems.
The integration of the systems, circulatory, nervous, digestive, all work together to maintain a balance known as homeostasis, which really means stable state. And it's one of the most remarkable properties in highly complex organisms. In animals, homeostasis regulates heat, much like a thermostat, to maintain a stable environment for the systems to properly work. Homeostasis relies on a negative feedback system in which the body responds to a change in the opposite way. For example, you sweat when it is hot. An animal's fur grows thicker in the winter.
Animals generally have to remain their bodies have to remain a certain temperature for everything to function, so their organs and things to function. And different animals, again, have different ways of doing this. What most people call cold-blooded animals, or we call ectotherms, have to rely on the ambient temperature. And so if you see a turtle basking in the sun, he's trying to heat up. When he gets too hot, he'll slip into the water and cool down. So he does it externally. Mammals and birds do it internal. We have this big engine that creates heat. And most of us, not us humans, but most mammals and birds have some kind of body covering, so all that good heat that's made is not lost to the outside.
Such animals are called endotherms, and they regulate body temperature internally. There are also homeotherms, organisms that keep a constant body temperature over a wide range of external temperatures, like lizards. Heterotherms, organisms that keep their body temperature constant some of the time, like hummingbirds. And poikilotherms, those whose body temperature is that of the environment, like starfish. And while we know the basics of how all these systems and functions work, there is still so much more we do not know, because we are more than the sum of our parts. We are much more. We are alive, and yet we do not know what causes the quality of life. Just as we don't know how the brain, an organ, produces the quality we call mind. the brain remains a great mystery.
We know very little about our brain. We know that we use very little of our brain. Our brain is the most energy requiring organ in the body. I think 20% of the energy that we have to produce goes to the brain. So it's a very expensive organ to maintain. But we don't know much about it. We really don't.
The study of humans and other animals is a very exciting one. Scientists are making new discoveries every day, from how smell is connected to memory, to discovering more creatures that belong in the animal kingdom. While there are 280,000 named species to date, there are still about 10,000 new ones discovered each year. And yet we still need to be very careful to protect all these creatures. Many species are endangered due to our human activity, such as the black bear, cheetahs, sea turtles, elephants, and thousands more.
Elephants are increasingly losing their habitat because of humans. And now they're in conflict with humans. And what are we going to do about that? And I think that's a very difficult question. People talk a lot about the term sustainability now, finding ways to meet our needs without disturbing the needs of the rest of the species on the planet. I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that. And so we have to work to find ways to conserve these species.
But even species with fearsome reputations, such as the great white shark, are dwindling and possibly on their way to extinction. And if this should happen, there could be great consequences to ecosystems and the Earth's entire biosphere.
A shark's job in the ocean is to keep animal populations healthy by weeding out the sick and the unfit. You want to know as much as you can about the animals around you, and especially those that you intend to exploit, either for food or for goods or whatever. You know, with anything, you want a sustainable resource. If you're going to use it, it needs to be harvested in such a way that it's sustainable. If not, that resource isn't going to be there for future generations. And that's bad enough. But if you remove these top predators from the marine ecosystem, is it sort of like removing a card from a house of cards? What else is going to top it?
Conservation, preservation, and exploration of our own kingdom can help us better understand such things as medicine, ecology, and even behavior. If we do not know about other animals, then we cannot fully understand human life and its place on Earth.